What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of Orange Slices. I'm Heath Pearce. We are just 9 days away from the World Cup 2026 right here in our North American backyard. The teams are arriving, the warm-up matches have begun, and the hydration breaks are already pretty wild to take in. To talk about it all, we have a great friend of the show, a man whose accomplishments are far too many to list. So he's here to hang out with us just for a little bit.
Wait, Mark McKenzie's here? Mark McKenzie's on the show. It's amazing.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
The biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every goal changes everything. And now, FanDuel is giving you a reason to root for every single one. Introducing Every Goal Pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. That's right, more goals means more bonus bets, and all you have to do is turn on your token. Are the U.S. going to go on a deep run, reach a semifinal, or even a final in a dream world? Or are they going out in the group stages? From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started now. 21 and over, select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino. 18 and over in D.C., Kentucky, and Wyoming. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-MY-RESET. In Connecticut, call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Maryland, visit mdgamblinghelp.org. In Massachusetts, visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050.
No, but we're going to give a few of your accomplishments. Former MLS Defender of the Year, represented the United States in the 2006 World Cup,
That's
NCAA
correct.
champion, a Gold Cup champion, and a world-class internet talking head guy. I love this man to death. He's the one that gave me my pathway into this space. The pride of Temple City, California, your favorite former U.S. men's national team player, James P. Conrad.
Yes.
Welcome to Orange Slices, Jimmy. Appreciate you joining us, man.
It's great to see you, Hollywood Harry, and it's been a while since we got to share a space, so I'm excited to get back into it.
I know you and I have only done about 500 episodes of this internet thing together, maybe even more than that if we really actually added them all up. But it was a wild one in Charlotte. U.S. wins 3-2. Serginho Dest, Pulisic, Balogun, all with the goals. What did you take away from this one just initially? I know you and I always default back to kind of the era of, like, at a minimum, show me some fight. So one, did you see that? And two, kind of what are a few of the things that you took away from that game?
Yeah, I think right from the get-go, I was really impressed with where Christian Pulisic was setting up. You know, we talk about kind of that box in midfield where you have 2 6s and 2 10s, and the 10s are inverted wingers. But I thought Christian did a really nice job of pulling wide to try to get isolated 1v1. And within, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, he caught the ball and ran right at somebody. That's somebody full of confidence that has something to prove. And I like that he has a little bit of that chip on his shoulder, and he got rewarded from that attitude and that mentality with a goal and an assist. And I wonder what he got subbed off at halftime for those that didn't watch the game, but I wonder what that next 15 to 20 minutes would have looked like if we would have given him more minutes. And in some ways, I'm bummed we changed out 10 players at halftime, so we could have seen a little bit more of that team in the first half, have another 15 minutes to maybe solve problems that Senegal were going to try to change, right, coming out of halftime themselves. But a great game overall. I thought we were really on the front foot, especially in the first half. It took a while for the 10 that got switched in at the second half to kind of find their rhythm. And obviously Senegal kept out most of their guys and already kind of in the rhythm of the game. But, yeah, more positives than negatives. I think that's the big takeaway.
And this is an actual just stream of consciousness question, but is it 5 subs at the World Cup?
It's 5 subs.
5 subs.
But you have three windows to make those 5 subs.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you find that, and I find this to be the case, especially doing a lot of MLS games, that, like, if teams do that early, the rhythm can really disappear, right? And we're talking about 10 at halftime, and there's some tinkering. And so I agree that, like, even if they had the plan of, like, 45, and I know there's some minute control and part of their grander plan and all that stuff, but I think it would have been great to see sort of 60 to just sort of, and then go into some of that, just because it felt like second half took so long for that sort of second 11, so to speak, to find a rhythm and get on the same page.
I agree with you. There's something about game management that is something that you have to work on, right? It's an art, it's a skill, and you have to have repetitions. And you knew that Senegal were going to come out and do something different, right? They were down 2-1. You know, they got the 1 goal. We can talk about that in a little bit. But overall, like the first 20, 30 minutes, we were pretty good. And let's be honest, if we look back at the March window, Belgium and Portugal, we were pretty good, or at least decent, in the first 30 minutes of those games. It's when, after that happened, where the game started to get away from us. And I guess there's a part of me that wants to see what this team looks like when the game starts to get away from us. How do we wrangle that back under our control? I don't think we've demonstrated that consistently against a top opponent, right? When the Belgium and Portugal teams, like, hit the switch and, like, picked up another gear, we just didn't have any answers for that. And we didn't allow this first half group to maybe suffer a little bit with Senegal's changes at halftime and then allow them to solve those problems. And Senegal's got some momentum. How do we get that back? And that is something that you need to get out there and do. And that's what I thought these friendlies were for. So I was a little disappointed by the wholesale changes at halftime just for those reasons. But obviously seeing guys get a whole bunch of minutes isn't the worst thing ever because we're trying to build confidence going into this. And I think we had a lot of attacking players get a lot of confidence out of this game.
Yeah, what I would say, there was a couple things, and I want your take on this as well. One, for us as defenders, great. Bring 10 defenders, that's amazing, right? We increase our own odds of going to World Cups when you bring that many. But what I liked about Freeman being a back three, but also a fullback type of player, is how much he could advance the game up the field. Did you take notice of that? Just because at times he was way up the field, and I feel like that was a variation that Senegal couldn't figure out, right? Which is like, okay, you've got your wing back higher up, and then you've got a player that's driving, that's comfortable on the ball. Like that level of comfort, and Tim Ream's comfortable on the ball, but like to drive the game as more of an attacking type of player. I really liked that dynamic on that right-hand side.
No, great shout. I thought Alex Freeman was another player that elevated their status and in some ways maybe cemented that status as being a starter for us come June 12th against Paraguay. The last time that Dest and Freeman started in those same roles was against Uruguay. We won that game 5-1. They had a half together in this one. We scored 2 goals, and Dest scored 1 of them. And in the Uruguay game, Freeman scored 2. So, yes, I agree with you. So you have 2 top opponents in Uruguay and Senegal that both didn't have any answers for that movement that Freeman can create and that type of rotation, right? So all of a sudden, if Dest positions himself a little higher than drops off, and if they're marking Dest, right, there's a lot of triggers here, then Freeman can pick up the ball and maybe instead of splitting the defense with a pass, he can now split it with a run. And as you know, right, when you're defending and all of a sudden the line in front of you gets split, now you got to make decisions. Do I step to the ball? Do I stay in my space? Do I go get closer to my guy? Like, you've now forced the defense to have to think, to have to suffer a little bit. And so that's what I think Freeman provides out of that position. And thankfully, him and Dest seem to have a really good understanding of, hey, if you go, I'll stay, and vice versa. So, yeah, long may that continue because I think that's going to be trouble for especially our first 2 opponents. Yeah. And maybe even against Turkey as well, where all 3 group stage opponents, if we roll out with Dest and Freeman, I don't know how they're going to solve that. And if they do, that's ultimately, if a team figures out how to slow that down, it's going to open up space somewhere else. And obviously, we just have to exploit that space.
Yeah, Jimmy, again, thanks for joining us. Obviously, this is Orange Slices. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, leave us a review, rating, throw some comments in, follow us on Slice of Soccer on Instagram, get involved in the conversation because we love to include all of that on the show. Jimmy, I want to talk to you a little bit also about Berhalter, another player that I think you said it well in that, like, the U.S. needed to suffer, right? And we saw at times, if we have a catastrophic turnover, I think we're really exposed. Yeah, we have speed in Mark McKenzie. We had speed in Freeman and that recovery ability. But I think that's a big worrying sign for me, and obviously the age of Tim Ream, of just being exposed in transitional moments and a turnover through the midfield. But for Sebastian Berhalter, one of the things that I've always liked about at least calling his games in MLS is the ground that he covers, and more so the ground that he covers because, like, sometimes running is just running. It's about, like, you know, how smart is he running. But it's more of his connectivity and how close he plays to other midfielders, right? He always seems to be 5, 6, 7 yards off the shoulder to create that triangulation in build-up play, numbers around the ball, and then in transition, always somewhat being connected to the game to be able to kind of go either way. Do you think he's got a legitimate chance to be a starter in this World Cup, or is it more of like a player that you're bringing in later in matches?
I'll start here. That's great analysis on Sebastian. I would say that I was surprised that he started. Mm-hmm. But then when you realize that Johnny Cardoso is not in the team because he's hurt, and we surprisingly left Tanner Tessman off the roster, which for me is still pretty shocking.
Pretty shocking, yeah.
Given how thin we are. Then maybe it's not as much of a surprise that he got the start. However, there was a lot of clamoring or potential clamoring for Weston McKennie playing off of Tyler Adams' shoulder. What I thought was interesting, I'm going to sidebar here, was that when Mauricio Pochettino brought Alex Zendejas onto the field, he had to make a decision as to who was going to drop next to Sebastian Berhalter in the second half to play that double six spot. It could have been Tillman, could have been McKennie, and he elected to go with Tillman. So that makes me think he's not even really considering Weston McKennie in that spot. Pochettino's had a lot of discourse around, I want to have him float. I want Weston McKennie to be able to find the spaces and find the game. And so that's not necessarily the role of a six. And that's where Sebastian Berhalter valued, I think, rises up because he does do all those little things that you mentioned. And what I actually appreciate is that Tyler Adams, for me, when you partner with Tyler Adams, and we see it with Bournemouth as well, he's so much better and playing at his peak when he can hunt the ball. And if you're going to allow Tyler Adams to go hunt the ball, you need someone that's going to have the positional discipline to sit in front of our back 3, 4, whatever you want to call it. But we need somebody in those spaces, and I think that Sebastian Berhalter's done a nice job of understanding that role and allowing Tyler Adams to hunt. Conversely, Sebastian Berhalter's pretty good at hunting. I still think he's probably more of an 8 than a 6, but there's still something about allowing Tyler to go. And he's so good at that, and we see it for both club and country. And so if a team can exploit that and maybe get Tyler out of position and or whoever else is the other 6 out of position, that's where I think we get a little vulnerable. And to your point, if we have any bad giveaways, we don't look great. And if we talk about the goal that Senegal scored right before halftime, which is a terrible time to give up a goal, everybody, right? You never want to give up a goal in the first or last 5 minutes of any half. Tim Ream played a pretty predictable square ball out to Jedi that got caught underneath his feet, and then all of a sudden they win it and they go. Our reactions were actually pretty good, Heath, where we had 6 players, but nobody really stepped to the ball, and Tim Ream didn't step to the ball. He just kind of backed up, and then Sadio Mane made a good run, good timed ball, good weighted pass, and they score. For me, too easy, right? And so the whole thing, how do we solve that? And that concerns me a little bit about Tim Ream and our team in transition. But ultimately, when I think about the chances Senegal got, we'll just talk about the first half first. Even the second half, the second goal they got, it was us versus us at that point, right? We created our own mistakes. It wasn't anything that Senegal out and out did. So that makes me happy that it wasn't like they were outplaying us in really any facet of the game. It was only when we made our own mistakes, and fair play to them for maybe some types of pressure. But ultimately, I think there's just a lot of positives from this game, and I hope that we can carry that momentum into the Germany game because we really needed a win. It just feels good to win, Heath.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a nice feeling. Jimmy, you were obviously in the 2006 World Cup squad. You went through, and obviously 2006 was unique just because coming off of 2002, like massive expectations. Maybe similar to what the U.S. has now, but obviously,
I think we were ranked like number 3 in the world or something crazy. So thanks FIFA for the inflated rankings. Yeah. Crazy.
I remember it going from like 14 to 11 to breaking top 10, and so obviously there was no sort of like we over-indexed and whatever. And I think even Bruce admits of just like maybe the bit of overconfidence going into that of like kind of everybody kind of telling you how great you are, and therefore you have to exceed the quinto partido, so to speak. But how important are results going into the World Cup for confidence? Because like you said, 10 changes, there's a lot of other things at play. It's not just about go out and win, but when you're the players, you go into the locker room and you look at the scoreboard, it says 3-2, and you got one more tune-up and it's time to go. There's got to be some value in that, right?
Yeah. I mean, listen, goals change the mood while you're playing, right, for fans and players and coaches. And then when we look at the end result, that's ultimately what we're judged on. And no matter what Mauricio Pochettino's tenure has looked like leading up to the World Cup, he's only going to be judged on what happens in the World Cup. And if we do well, then all that other stuff that we were giving him a hard time about doesn't really matter. And we're like, yeah, this guy was the guy. No, I'm glad we paid him $6 million a year, right? So I would say with regard to 2006, though, we had 3 warm-up games, and all 3 of them hadn't qualified for the World Cup. So at that time, Morocco was our first game. Then we played Venezuela, and Bruce made me captain that game. Shout out to Bruce, my first time ever captaining the U.S. team. Which,
nice.
Wow, what a thrill. And then we played Latvia. We played Latvia in Connecticut, and that was like our send-off game before we left for Germany. Now we played Angola in a closed-door scrimmage when we were over there, and they were a World Cup team, but not one of, obviously, the big boys. And so I remember Bruce saying, in hindsight, we just didn't have good enough competition to match what we were going to see in a World Cup. Because in that, just to refresh everybody's memory, we were in the group of death. We had Czech Republic, who had Pavel Nedved, who was not too far off of winning a Ballon d'Or. You had Thomas Rosicky, who was balling it up for Arsenal at the time. You had Petr Cech in goal, who I've never seen his arm span was crazy, his wingspan. And those guys were ready, and they kicked our ass. And it was, I'd never seen a national team play as well against us in that one. And me and Ben Olsen were on the bench going, Jesus. I mean, we were down 2-0 after 20 minutes. And I remember warming up. It was me, Josh Wolf, and Clint Dempsey were warming up in the second half. And it was one of those moments where, like, I'm so thrilled to be at a World Cup, and I want to play in a World Cup, but I don't know if this is the game.
Yeah. I mean,
we were getting
there's no way
run
they're putting
over.
in a defender, right? Like, this,
Yeah.
you know, like that wouldn't be a smart tactical decision at this point.
Yeah, and then we're warming up. They score their third, and you're like, whoa, man, you know. But they ended up putting Wolfie in, and so me and Clint got to do the long walk of shame back to the bench that we didn't get picked. It was fine. I mean, obviously you want to play, and if that would have been my moment, I would have taken it, of course. But that was a game, and I remember Bruce after that game was everybody. You're right, the stakes were raised. But I wonder. I say all this as context for. I wonder if we had played better opponents. If we had been a little bit more prepared. Again, Czech Republic were excellent. Then we tied Italy in game 2. We were up for it. We were emotionally up for it, and that was a historic game. And obviously, they went on to win the World Cup, and they didn't beat us. And then we lost to Ghana, which I still pissed at the referee for calling the most phantom penalty of all time because it was a size difference between 8-foot tall Gooch and 2-foot tall. I can't remember his name, but the Ghanaian striker up top. Anyway, so I'm not still bitter, Heath, on that, but I do agree with you that.
Work through it.
So here's the flip side of that. Now you book 4 opponents coming into this tournament that are unbelievable. Belgium, Portugal, we got smoked in both of those. But you learn a few things, i.e., probably not going to play a back 4 with this group of players. We should go back into our 3/5 with wing backs. I mean, we're really built for that, and it shows. So that's nice that we did it against Senegal. So that's going to remain. So that was a lesson learned from the March. And then you got Germany. My concern when I saw all of these was like, this is amazing. And this is what we probably needed in 2006. However, it would be nice to have one opponent of those 4 that felt and looked a little bit more similar to Paraguay and Australia. That a little bit more, like giving us a picture of how are we going to break down a low block.
Exactly.
Now, I guess Senegal did it a little bit. I didn't like their organization in the goal they scored. It's probably going to be something. If we do give up a goal against Australia or Paraguay, it's probably going to look a lot like the goal they scored right before halftime. Force a bad turnover. 2 passes later, it's in the back of the net, right? They got good hard running, good purposeful running. So I guess there was an element of that from Senegal, but we're not going to see that against Germany. So yeah, I guess I'm a little bit torn. But of the 4 opponents, I just wish we would have had one that was a little bit more like the pictures we're going to see when we play against Paraguay and Australia.
The modern game now, it's so different, right? There was an element when we go down and play in CONCACAF previously where you'd say just out-discipline the other team, right? Just out-discipline, right? Just stay disciplined, and we're going to get that 2-3 pass chance, get down and score a goal, and you kind of get out of there with a point or 3 points. Now CONCACAF, now the rest of the world is playing in a way that's like more pragmatic, right? They're more organized, they're more disciplined. That if you were scouting the U.S., as I'm sure all of our group stage opponents were doing in this one, you would still see the idea of like, okay, maybe we're even in some ways, maybe we're ahead in some ways, but still the thought remains that if we can get 1 or 2 bad turnovers and capitalize on the U.S., that could be where the opportunities are, regardless of talent.
That's a great shout. I guess if I put on my hat of how to slow us down, if I'm an opposing coach, in some ways, how more often than not when we're kids and we're going through the system and we're learning how to defend as a group, the easy way to kind of shape the play is to force everything wide, right? Cut off the middle and force it wide. I'd almost argue, and the 1970s Brazil team was very good at this. They would force the ball into the middle of the field and then trap you from there. So they'd almost allow you to have that pass into one of the 6s. So in this case, it would be Berhalter and Adams. And then right when that happened, that would be their trigger to just suffocate. Now, here's the trick to this. You don't try to go win that ball. From once it goes into Tyler Adams, you're not trying to win it. You're just trying to take everything else away. So then he's going to have to take an extra touch. Now, you could argue the players with the most ego are in the middle of the field. They think they can get out of every situation, right? So you're almost playing into their ego a little bit. I may or may not have tried this with my U15 girls team that my daughter's on. But it works. It works because everybody tries to, again, the ego part of it. I'm the best player on the team. This is where I play. I got to play out of every situation. You just lean into that. So all you do is you just get really tight on that person. But a lot of the players aren't used to that. They're just assuming you're going to try to win it. But you don't. You just get really tight, and then you lock out everything else. And even if they get it and play backwards, everything is so locked up, they've got nowhere else to go, Heath. And then it goes back to the goalkeeper, and the goalkeeper now, that's another trigger to keep going. And now we got to hit it long. And now it becomes very Arsenal-esque. I know you're an Arsenal fan, but, man, they were second ball merchants in that Champions League final, right? And that's what PSG does, though. They suffocate you. They force you to hit it long. They're crazy in their 1v1 situations, PSG, by the way. It's just like Pacho and Gyökeres or Pacho and Havertz by themselves. We're like nobody around him. Like, all right, we're going to solve this. We're going to bet on Pacho to outlast Havertz in these situations. And so That's a tactic, but I think it can work. And if they can suffocate that, other teams, and kind of force us into the middle and force us to make mistakes like we saw even in the Senegal game, yeah, that could lead to us having some problems. Because our strengths are out wide and in the pockets between, so if Christian can get it in the pocket between the back four and the midfield line like he did yesterday, and if he can get Jedi and then you can get, Freeman and Dest and Reyna/Tillman or anything going there, and that allows, I thought Pepe did a really nice job of circling out into the channels, right, and getting himself in good spots, and then Christian could rotate through the other way. There's a lot of good movement that I liked from our attacking front 3, 4, 5, and with our wingbacks. So I do think that we're going to have some unpredictability and that we can hurt you on both sides, which I appreciate everybody being healthy, because if you lose Jedi or Dest, well, I guess you have Weah there too. That's fine. But on the left side, it gets a little bit trickier. So that's kind of how I would try to defend us, is you let us have that pass into the middle, and then you suffocate the shit out of us. But don't tell anybody I said that.
Well, we'll cut that out, and I'll just keep it for my own tactics.
Cut that.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
The biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every goal changes everything. And now, FanDuel is giving you a reason to root for every single one. Introducing Every Goal Pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. That's right, more goals means more bonus bets, and all you have to do is turn on your token. Are the U.S. going to go on a deep run, reach a semifinal, or even a final in a dream world? Or are they going out in the group stages? From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started now. 21 and over, select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino. 18 and over in D.C., Kentucky, and Wyoming. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-MY-RESET. In Connecticut, call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Maryland, visit mdgamblinghelp.org. In Massachusetts, visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050.
Now let's get back to the show.
Kind of take us into the mind for the listeners of what the U.S. is about to experience in that first World Cup game. It's one thing, we got some guys that have played in a World Cup and there's experience there, and they've played on big stages in Champions League and things like that. But obviously the magnitude of 94 on our home soil kind of multiplied and magnified. But you went through this, and even though you didn't start in your first game, there is a feeling when you've stepped into something that you've never felt before, right? And I always go back to, I played a few national team games, and then it was the March game against Germany in Germany before the 2006 World Cup. And I remember coming into that game as the first experience. I was playing in Denmark at the time, and if you played FC Copenhagen or Brøndby or something, you'd have a good atmosphere. But by and large, you could manage the emotion, the sound. And I remember that game was at Dortmund, right? And massive stadium, massive crowd, in the lead up to a hosted World Cup for Germany. I remember coming on the field and being like, either Bobby Convey's ignoring me or he can't hear me, right? And, the back line is like, either somebody's talking to me because I can't hear them. And I remember thinking like, man, this is felt like like a learning experience for me of like pure isolation, because the intensity, the atmosphere, the nervousness that I had, it's not even a World Cup game, but it's against Germany in Germany. That was the first time in my career that I was like, wow, this is something different. Now you add the fact that it's a World Cup, you add the fact that there's all this pressure, you add the fact of all the emotion and all those things. For somebody that went through it, and you didn't start in that first game, but what is the maybe indescribable feeling of managing the emotions, the adrenaline of the fact, like one comparison now is like, I started playing competitive tennis matches, right? And I haven't had this buzz or vibe since I retired. But I remember going, practicing, training, whatever, and then going into the first game that was a manageable match, and like my arm was basically numb from the adrenaline, right? I was like, everything that I had done, I couldn't remember anymore. And I was like, man, my grip feels off. And I was like, oh, I remember this feeling that like I've trained and I feel ready, but at the same time, like something feels off, right? I've got to figure out how to manage this feeling inside of me of adrenaline and emotion. Like talk me through, or talk the audience through that feeling, if it's describable.
Yeah, well, no, I kind of want to know, did you win that match?
I did win that match, but like, especially because it's so skill-based, like serving, I'm basically like patty caking, and I'm like, dude, I haven't done this ever. But like my arm is so unconnected to my body, and my body has got this adrenaline, like It's like that lactic acid buildup in your hamstrings type of feeling. What is it that a player's going to experience or have to deal with in a way that they likely haven't ever in their career?
A couple things that I remember vividly. One was the national anthem, and we've heard it throughout our lives, right? When I was a kid, we would say Pledge of Allegiance to the flag every morning in school, right? That's how old I am, because they don't do that anymore. But when the national anthem got played in that first game against Czech Republic, I couldn't believe how emotional that felt. It's the first time that I felt that emotional about hearing the national anthem. Like, yes, I'm here for my country. I'm representing my country, and that is awesome. And I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make everybody back home proud. Like, you start to really embody that. And in some ways, I saw that in the Senegal game yesterday, where you could see a different type of level of not commitment. That might be too strong of a word, but the energy was like, we're here to compete.
But even on the goals, by the way, even on the goals, you could feel, and maybe it's me as a fan, but you could feel that like intensity and magnitude of like the occasion and rising to that moment.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And you could see there's a little bit more urgency, right? And I feel like, and I've been here before too, once you get named to the team and you get named to the roster, everybody relaxes. Not in a way where it means you're going to be casual when you're out on the field, but you're just, okay, I'm on the team. And now you could, that part of it, which is there's so much gray area and emotion, and everybody's asking you questions. Are you making the team? You making the team? Making the team? Like, all that's done. Now it's more like, can I get minutes? And that changes the perspective and the approach, I should say. And I thought we saw good evidence of it in the Senegal game, where you're like, all right, these guys have a good idea what they want to do. Everybody's on the team. That part of it's over. Let's just move forward and be as sharp as we can. And I saw evidence of that, especially on the attacking side of the ball. I thought we were really sharp, only having, less than a week of training together before that game. So I was really impressed with that. The other part I would add is that I knew, and I felt this way before the Italy game. I felt this way before the Ghana game. At that moment, when that whistle blows, you know that if somebody didn't like you before, everybody has your, like at home or whatever, they give you a hard time for, playing in MLS or playing for Kansas City or whatever it is. They have your back in that moment. Everybody has your back, Heath. It's incredible to know that at that moment, everybody can put aside all the bullshit or whatever, and we just want to win. And at that point, it doesn't matter who's on the field. Just win, baby. Like, just do what we have to do, make us proud, and go out and get a win. And that is incredibly powerful and motivating. And that was a feeling that I couldn't describe, or I could describe it, but it's hard to kind of share how immense that is. And there are going to be some players, and I'd seen it too, not just on our team but others, that moment was too big. And that's what I learned, Heath, because at that World Cup in 2006, me and Clint Dempsey came home as the highest-rated players for our team. From Grant Wall, rest in peace to him, and for some others. We were the two highest-rated players, and we were only MLS experienced at that point. Clint had made his move to Europe. And I learned in that moment, it doesn't matter where you play before a World Cup, and it doesn't matter where you're going to play afterwards. Are you ready when the whistle blows? That's what I learned. And I think Clint and I both kind of stood up and said, we're ready to be counted, and we're going to do our jobs. So I'm hopeful that these guys can kind of absorb that moment in a positive way, knowing that it's at home, so you're going to feel probably a little bit more. But after what I saw yesterday, I'm more and more encouraged that the attitude is going to be exactly right once we're ready to go on June 12th.
Let me ask you this again, and I know you've addressed this on some of your other shows, but where did you stand? And by the way, I think we're all kind of looking under the microscope of everything right now. But this win, I think, kind of gives us breathing room to go, okay, there is an intensity. Like you said, it is like magnified. The attitude, the mentality, the urgency, the conviction, I think was shown in a way that has to be the bare minimum of what this team does, right, in the World Cup. But in the lead up, right, a lot of talk about Pochettino. I know that he's very militant. There's basically a right or wrong in the way that he wants to play. Seems to have gotten it right in that context. And that's all going to be the players. And it might be the players in spite of what's being asked of them coming together. That can be a unifier, as you and I know, playing for different teams. Like, that could be a thing that brings people together. Or there could be an actual buy-in to where things need to go. What was your take on the call versus email?
After being able to sit with this a little bit, I'll give you my initial take, which I haven't changed on this. For the players that have been with you for a good part of the journey, Diego Luna, Tanner Tessman, 1,000% deserve the call. No question. They've been with you. You've probably had some conversations with them. You've stated publicly how much you adore them as players. Okay, they deserve the call. I know he got very defensive in the press conference about this, so clearly he might want to reflect on how he wants to approach that moving forward. And I get where he's saying, like when you're told you're not going to be a part of something, you don't want to hear anything else. I get that, but that's how he was treated, and I feel like, well, if that didn't feel good, why wouldn't you try to like find a balance there? Now, for the players that were on the fringes, maybe part of one camp, like Tristan Blackmon. Tristan Blackmon played 2 games, wasn't part of any other camp. You sent him an email. He probably knew anyway. You're just confirming that.
He's probably saying if there's an injury, I've got a chance, but otherwise, like,
yeah, maybe.
The writing's probably on the wall for me.
Yeah, I mean, he even played 2 games for us, so you're thinking maybe he deserves a call. But like even let's leave. I'll put him on the other side. Like an email probably is enough for what he knows where he was anyway. Xavier Gozo, definitely an email. But we're really talking about maybe 5-6 players that probably deserve the phone and say, hey, listen, I really value you. I appreciate what you've done for the program. We're just going to go a different direction. It hurts. Bob Bradley called me ahead of 2010 and said, we're not going to bring you. And it hurts. But I did respect him for calling me and saying, you know, this is the decision and here's why. And do you have any questions? And at that point, I didn't want to hear anything. And I knew that I had, and you were part of the journey there, Heath. So you knew that I didn't make the most of my opportunities when they came my way.
Yeah, but Jimmy,
that's on me.
It's still, but I don't think real-time information equates to like you can't deliver bad news in a good way, right? However, looking down the line, right, and this is where I found even peace with that final camp in 2010 with Jesse Marsh. I've talked about this a lot. Like the courage of Jesse Marsh being able to say that to me, even though in real time I'm like, you know, again, who's this guy, right? He hasn't been in the national team. He hasn't been grinding with us for the last 3-4 years. He's new in the coaching staff. Why is he the one, right? And then, of course, we went into the room and you got to shake everybody's hand and you know, Bob said thank you and you kind of go around the room and all of that. But years later, I've been able to gain an appreciation for that, right? And for a player who just got an email, you'll always have that, and you know, everything is hindsight 2020 for sure in anything, but I think giving somebody that time of day and that respect for somebody who wears the crest, I think is necessary towards their long-term processing of this, right? Of just give them that minute. There's nothing you're going to say in that time we're going to be like, oh, thank you so much. It's an honor for you to give me these extra couple of, no. They're still in their mind going like, I should have been there, whatever. Even if you're Tristan Blackmon, you're still like, I feel like Tristan Blackman's arguably one of the top 2-3 defenders in Major League Soccer. You know, he in his mind is never going to believe that he isn't as good as the defenders on the team. So in real time, it's never going to be what you want it to be. However, in the long term, there is a respect for somebody who wears the crest, a legacy standpoint, an ambassador, or somebody who's giving everything that I think over time would outweigh the short-term sort of, you know, whether it's about me, whether it's about you type of thing.
Yeah, no, there's a human element to it, and those guys do deserve more than they received. Can I say, though, as I've sat with this, if we have a great run under Mauricio Pochettino at the World Cup, that I'm saying emails for everybody moving forward. We're not going back. Yeah. Just cold emails is how we're going to start solving problems with our player pool. And if they want to earn it, they got to fight through that. So no, but I agree with you. It feels short-sighted, and maybe because Mauricio Pochettino knows that he's going to be leaving after the World Cup, to not extend an olive branch or maybe this World Cup cycle wasn't for you, but if you keep working, I think your future is very bright. And there's nothing. And what does that take? A couple minutes? Yeah, it's just hard, and he didn't want to do it, and so he elected to. And from what I understand, the email didn't even come from him. It came from like a team administrator, which I think is even worse.
Again, to me, I can only take from my own experience, and I know that it was like the middle of the night when they decided the final roster in 2010. You know, it was 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was.
Yeah, I'm. Listen, you might not be bitter about it, but I'm still bitter for you. That's hard. That's really harsh.
I mean, there's always the little details, right? Which is like, keep your phone on you till midnight, you know, and it's like 12:30, and you're like, what's going on? You know, it's like those little things that you read into when you're just manifesting everything you can. But regardless, the focus is now on the thing, right? Like, The moment they told us, it's not like, hey, I'm going to carve out a half day to work through it with these guys, and then we're going to shift our focus to the World Cup. It's like, no, the World Cup is the thing. But there's still a responsibility to take care of the dirty stuff that's not enjoyable, that's not pleasurable. And so I appreciate you giving me your take on that. For you now in the coaching space, and this kind of goes along the same thing of like, spend enough time building relationships with players on some level, and it may not be the head coach, it may be your assistant or whatever, that gathers enough data and information to go, what's it going to take to get the most out of this player? For you as a coach now, do you agree with that? Do you find it far more challenging knowing that you're coaching professional athletes and that it's not as easy as just like, I know this guy needs a hug and this guy needs harsh words?
No, there's a lot of layers to it. I would say that one of the big takeaways for me in the coaching courses, and I'm currently in the middle of getting my UEFA AA license, is that you want to meet your players where they are. So you just explained that perfectly. Everybody's going to learn different. Everybody's going to absorb information different. And I actually learned this coaching one of my youth teams, that I could say the same thing to 15 kids, but they're all going to absorb that information differently.
Yeah, I mean, they all hear it as Jimmy's an asshole, but like beyond that,
Most likely, yeah.
Like, when's he going to stop talking so we can get back to training?
Well, that's another thing, too, is for as much as I like to talk, Heath, I've learned that brevity is an art form. I still have not yet mastered. I remember former coach Bob Gansler used to tell me that I talk too much, and can we figure out ways to condense all that information? And he was right, because especially in high-pressure situations, if I'm on the field and I'm yelling at you, Heath, to do something, you need that information as tight and concise as possible because the game's moving so fast. So how do you do that? When do you deliver it? How do you deliver it? And that's all the same. So even when I'm approaching the players that I'm working with the Oakland Roots, shout out to the Roots, and to Ryan Martin, who's the head coach, who's been so gracious, and I'm so grateful to him for giving me this opportunity I'm kind of like the backline coach. I'm an intern. I'm a coaching intern, but I get to work with the backline and the center backs in particular. Listen, the game's getting more specialized, even more NFL-esque, right? Set piece coaches, throwing coaches. Why not a backline coach? So I pitched the idea, and he accepted, and it's been fun. I really, really enjoy it. I love working with this group of players. But yes, to your point, there's challenges. And a lot of it's just consistency. How do you teach consistency? We can talk about it, and I can show them things that's going to help them. Or maybe one player, is a 7 or 8 out of 10, as we like to say. But then the next game they're a 3 or a 4. How do you get them to at least average a 6? So there's not the highs and lows. There's not the swings aren't as high or low. And that's fascinating to me. And okay, all of a sudden you think you figure out one way to unlock the team, and we're working, I'll be honest, we're working on not dropping off to give away space just to give away space. And that's been an education for them, but then also for me. Like, how do I explain this? And not only explain it, and I think this is really important for players too when you coach, you have to explain the why. Why are we doing anything? And then conversely, I think you've won as a coach if you can say to a player, hey, why did you do this? And if they can answer and have an idea, it doesn't have to be, there's a lot of different ways to answer a why question, but if they can give you a really suitable answer that makes sense to the run of the game and to the situation at the moment, that's when I feel like you've got yourself a player, right? They're starting to learn, they're students, they've got a growth mindset, they're thinking the game, and so that's the challenge, always continuing to figure out how do you get that. We don't want to overload information. I feel like I did that to start. I was trying to prove myself as a coach, this, that, this, and I'm like, whoa. Then I realized I got way too many clips. I gotta strip it back and really just focus on this week. Let's just be really good at this. And once we got that mastered, let's move on to that, right? And so that, I think, has been a big learning for me as well. But yeah, what a challenge, Heath. I mean, coaching at any level, it's my appreciation for how hard it is. Not in a dramatic way, but just there's so many elements that go into trying to squeeze the most potential out of your group collectively and then each player individually that I'm exhausted by the end of the day, I'll be honest. It's an emotional lift.
Coming from a player standpoint where you deal with a lot of coaches where they ask you a question and there's a right or a wrong, right? And at times you're developing this thing of fear of being like, I need to know the answer through the lens of which the coach is asking me and not so much as and that was one of the things I learned in just even doing my B license with U.S. Soccer was dealing with Antal Vergeer. He had said, like, you need to ask you why. And I'd immediately become defensive of like, oh, he's like, from my background and the trauma I have is that he's challenging me in a way that's like, Either he doesn't think I'm smart, or he doesn't think I know what I'm talking about, or there's a right or a wrong answer. And what I learned through all that was more of like, you're the coach, do whatever you want, But are you thinking critically? Like, do you have the why? And the why might be completely wrong. You might go into the weekend and go, whoa, like the why is there's a new why, which is constant, but learning to think critically about something and then having the confidence to make a decision because you think it's the right idea doesn't mean it's right or wrong. You're only right or wrong based on the data that you then receive from that.
I love that. And the why is so important, meeting players where they are. Those are really important. And just clarity, making sure that you don't create any gray area in your communication. I would say very quickly for any youth coaches that are listening, one of the big mistakes I see for a lot of youth coaches is they'll have a practice plan and they'll be saying certain language and using different words during the practice. And then come game time, they're saying different words. And now things aren't going the way that they want and the emotion gets up and the kids pick up on that at all ages. My recommendation is if you got young kids, give them one objective for the week. And it can't be about wins and losses. Just like, hey, we want to connect passes. Great. Show them how to do that, what that looks like. Tell them why they're doing it. And then when you giving them feedback during the game, it can only be through the lens of that, of are we connecting passes? And then you reward them with high fives or whatever it is anytime that they connect a pass. Like that's what they should be judged on. And it's crazy, as simple as that may seem, it's very hard to execute because it's so hard not to get caught up in all the other things that are going on around the game. And it's just, I'm asking the same thing of my players with the roots. We want to make sure that we're holding a line that's not too deep, Heath, and not too high. Right? My players give me a hard time. Like we're just playing this. We're not playing Barcelona-esque high line crazy stuff. Hansi Flick, but that's the lens I'm judging them on. This is what we're working on this week, and I want this to get better because I know if this gets better, it's going to help every other line of the field and put us in better positions to win the ball and then be good supporting positions to transition out of that. And it's worked. Now we're still giving up more goals, and we can talk about that on another show. But that is something. That's the only thing I judge them on. I don't try to get caught up in anything else. So yes, maybe U5, U6. It feels very basic, but it's the same kind of principles that I'm trying to bring into this as well. And in some ways, trying to see if it works because I feel like overloading any players at any age doesn't ever work.
Well, I think that's well said. And I remember when U.S. Soccer was doing the grassroots courses, they were doing demos, and they gave me access to the demos. This was years ago. And I remember going in there being like, okay, yeah, I wasn't coaching or anything, but I was like, I'll look at the grassroots courses. And it talked exactly about that, of like consistency of language to the like simplicity as an example for anybody out there of like, you're in practice, you're telling a kid, spread out, right? You're teaching them how to spread out. And then you're telling them to open up. Right? And they've only heard and learned spread out, or they've learned open up. And then you're yelling at them, open up. And they're looking at you like, we don't know what that means. And they don't know that those are the two same things you're trying to deliver the message. So that simplicity of like,
great example.
Being comfortable repeating yourself on the same thing, because I think we as humans try to like iterate on things we say to add a fresh take on things just naturally in our language of like shortening communication. But that was a great learning for me. Jimmy, we're gonna let you go. Let us know what's who's gonna win the World Cup this summer, and what do you got going on, and where can we find you?
I mean, it's gonna be a country that's probably already won it. So I would lean towards Spain or France. They are just so deep in multiple positions. It's hard to get away from that. Portugal is actually very, very good too, and their midfield is going to be ridiculous with Vitinha and João Neves and most likely Bruno Fernandes. So that's midfield wins games. You and I would argue that defense wins championships, but if you've got a good, hard-driving, tempo-controlling midfield, it's going to be hard to dictate the terms there. So I would look at those three teams. My hope is that we get to minimum round of 16, but quarterfinal if we can build off some good momentum. And I think if we've won a couple games into the round of 16, and I think that the urge of energy that will come from galvanizing the country behind the team, I could see us pushing into a quarterfinal, which would be a big thrill for the game in this country in so many different ways. And then, I'm working for CBS Sports and Paramount Plus Golasso Network throughout the summer, so you can find me on a whole bunch of different platforms. Golasso Network's free if you have Pluto TV on your smart TV, and if you got P+, you can just come check us out. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Lots of different shows. 12 hours of fresh new content every single day during the World Cup. That's a lot.
Well, Jimmy,
so I don't know how much you like my ugly mug, but you're going to be seeing a lot.
You got a lot of words, so they're just giving you more and more airtime to be able to do that.
Exactly. We just changed the title of the show, and then I just keep going. Wind me up and watch me go.
Oh, and by the way, June 18th, we're having an Orange Slices event in New York City. If any of you that are listening are in the New York City area, let us know. We'll get you guys signed up to come out to the event. Jimmy's going to join us. We're going to have a fun little panel talking about all things national team, the World Cup, and all of that. So, again, Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us. We're back again on Thursday. Thank you all for listening. Subscribe and leave a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And follow us on Instagram, as I said, @SliceOfSoccer. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Hollywood Harry.
The Orange Slices podcast is a 4Soccer production in association with Gemini 13. Executive producers are Heath Pearce, Charles Steinauer, and Mark Harine. Associate producers, Alexis Arancio, Jenna Martin, and JJ Casillo. Written and produced by Mike Milberger, edited by Daniel Rue. With a special thanks to FanDuel Predicts Scott Teisch. Orange Slices Podcast 2026. All rights reserved.